Hi, Ignacio.
Hi,
How
how
are
are you,
you?
Melissa? I'm well.
Good, good. I'm so excited to get to talk to you today.
Me
I'll
too.
start. I'll start with a little blurb about you, but then we'll get into some fun questions that I think our community will be really excited to learn about your
Sure.
experiences. Cool. So, Ignacio, you are a 3L at Maryland Carey Law and a diversity and inclusion scholar who is looking forward to graduating next semester. You took the Levitas Initiative Clinic twice and delivered the Aaron Talk curriculum to two classes of seventh grade students at a Baltimore City public school, both fall 2019. Loved it so much. Did it again spring 2020. And you definitely have a badge of honor with getting through spring 2020. I know that was quite the time.
Yeah.
I enjoyed, I know we made videos together for the students when the curriculum had to end early, and you all made
Yeah.
really great videos for the students. It was cool. So they could kind of close out the sessions with you all since you didn't get to complete the work.
Right.
So having participated with the Aaron Levitas Initiative as well as the foundation work, why do you feel this work is important?
So I think it's important because I think that every student should be given the opportunity to learn about this, to let it help them grow and um, become a better person. Um, but also and I guess related to that is because I mean growing up, like, I love my parents, but they didn't exactly teach me all about this stuff growing up. So I think for other students who maybe their home life is worse than mine was, maybe it's the same as mine was, maybe their parents are just as loving, but they've forgotten, they haven't taught them about how to communicate, or about how to recognize and understand your own boundaries, or what really makes up the whole idea of consent. I think it's really important for especially at this 12-13 age, for kids to learn about this. So that's why I think it's important, is because everyone should learn about this, like you said.
And I think that's special for someone who got to deliver the curriculum, to be able to see it that way and what you saw within the kids and them changing, and that, this is something that imagine what it'll look like when, this is a norm. This is a norm of information that children grow up learning, and how then it will change who they are in the world, how they see each other and respond to and respect each other is incredible.
Right. And I think that another reason I think it's important is because like I remember being in middle school, and um, and just thinking about that, I can imagine what my middle school experience would have been like if we had had the Aaron Talks curriculum, because it's really about we're teaching um, how to respect other people, how to communicate better, how to um, how to understand other people's boundaries, how they can understand ours. Why certain gender norms can be harmful, are harmful, um, and really what to do if you see something going on that's really just not right. Um, I can imagine what my middle school and high school experience would have been like if we'd had this sort of curriculum.
Can you elaborate a little bit on the piece? Like you had mentioned, you shared the gender norms piece as well as boundaries. Are there any like things that you think about, I wish the kids in my class knew that, because like you start to picture like who they are in the world now, right? And they don't have those skills possibly because they didn't have them
Yeah.
then.
Yeah. So, I mean, So again, going back to gender norms, this is it's going to get really personal, but I have no problems sharing this. So, I mean, I remember being in middle school, and I was a kid who would always run off to the library during lunchtime. Um, and so I think somehow my other classmates, because I wasn't really liked that much in middle school. Um, I was I was bullied as a middle schooler, and so one of the things that that my classmates picked up on was there was a book I was reading. I don't remember what it was, but it was about it was a fiction book about lesbians, and so this was back when I was still in middle school. I hadn't come out as transgender yet, and so I was still outwardly appearing as a girl, and so everyone then thought that I was a lesbian, and it was such a terrible thing. And I think if my classmates had understood about gender norms and why homophobic name calling can be harmful and hurtful, that they probably would have um, they probably would have approached that in a different way, even if they were still mean to me. um,
Yeah,
but
I'm
yeah,
sorry to hear you had that experience, but I think thank you for sharing it, because I think that there's, it opens up a lot of eyes, right? Even, people make mistakes, right? And especially young people are learning, but I think, the intention is an important piece, right? And if given that happened to you, if they were at a place where they were working with this curriculum, you're still remembering that story, right?
yeah,
And who knows if they are, but maybe they
right,
aren't because they didn't know that they did something that was harmful, even though you're like, how could you not think that was harmful, right? But
yeah,
it does make you think. I think what's so beautiful about this work is it gives, I recognize it gives both parties and then all parties involved an opportunity to learn about what happened, right? So they can learn
hmm,
that it was harmful to you, and you would get to hear why they did it, and that would be important for them. And so you
right,
just see how it really impacts this whole group. And if you had been given the opportunity to talk about it as a group in a healthy, safe environment together, to know that that is hurtful and causes later problems too, it would have been
yeah,
amazing. And so I think this is such an important thing for children to be learning early, to be accepting, and they do try to categorize people and things. So it's important that they, you guys are giving them the platform to break it down, and be accepting and understanding and see that people feel differently and have lots of
right.
choice. Yeah.
At that age, at like 12, 13, you're just starting to figure out who you are and who you want to be. So I think that this curriculum is first of all great for that age, but I think you know everyone, all students at that age should be able to learn to learn these things.
What kind of things did you learn from them?
um, just how different it is growing up in the inner city, and the different kinds of things that you're thinking about when you think of, for example, how you're going to react as an active bystander to a situation. Like, what are the factors that are going to make you maybe not want to intervene directly, and maybe intervene indirectly, um, is one of the things that really stuck with me um, from our second to last session in the fall when we
Mm-hmm.
delivered the active bystander module.
Right, because they have a lot that they're considering, right? I mean, as an individual, whether how you see yourself as a person, how you identify. I remember I had done an example like that where one of the examples, it was you're in a parking lot and someone needs help and you're alone.
Yeah.
And it was really interesting because my partner, identified as male, and he was like, why wouldn't you help someone? And I was a mom at the time, right? And still am. And we had this really interesting conversation about, I said, well, I don't know who that person is, and that person might cause me harm, and I am responsible for people in my life. And I need to assess this situation a little more before just like walking up to someone and helping, unfortunately. And the kids that you work with, maybe their neighborhood isn't as safe, or they've seen something or heard something or learned something that they have to be really aware of. Is that kind of like what?
Yeah, that's exactly, what happens, in that whole discussion about, whether or not to intervene. And that moment was actually a really great segue into the next part of the module, because we got to teach them about all the different ways that you can intervene, even if you're not directly going up and confronting the person.
What would an example of that be?
Let's take, a situation where, you're a student in school, and you're walking down the hallway, and you see another student slap another girl's butt. Like, you don't have to go and directly confront that student. You could get a teacher to come and intervene. You could go up to the girl and be like, hey, are you okay? Let's walk to class together.
That's really cool. So it's teaching them that they can be helpful and be aware, and not go on like it never happened, right? Because that other individual has just experienced something,
right.
And that's important that they've been seen.
Mm-hmm.
Tell me what you think that the Aaron Talk curriculum kind of is giving to the students that maybe they weren't getting before.
I think it's really empowering them to learn how to communicate better, to understand how they can break down, gender norms, to be more thoughtful and aware when it comes to what they're doing on social media, when it comes to like sexual awareness, even when it comes to being aware of their own boundaries, and understanding consent and how to be an active bystander. I think it's really empowering for the students to learn all of this so that they can incorporate it into their daily lives.
Right. How do you think that can impact them, as adults later in their lives as well? Obviously, we know that, in middle school is when, sexual harassment is at its highest, unfortunately. But then, in high school is when sexual assault and rape goes up. And we know there's a lot of these actions in middle school that are precursors to those later harms in high school.
Yeah, so I mean, I think even just the first module is just about communication. I think that's so important. Learning about how you can communicate more effectively is gonna change anyone's life. Because, when you can communicate more effectively, you can get your ideas across better. You can connect with other people better than you could before.
All of the pieces, obviously, that have been, that are involved in this curriculum, really, when you bring it together, helping children without even knowing it, really, forming these attitudes and behaviors, and the way they see as well as respond to the world around them will make, a better, more healthy group of individuals, right? That'll be coming out into the world.
Yeah.
And how they interact with each other, for sure. So, did you see any changes within the students from, let's say, delivering the curriculum on the first day to the last day that you can share? How has this experience and even the content of the work from the Aaron Talk curriculum, if at all, altered how you see, the world?
Yeah, so it's also altered how it's definitely altered how I see the world, especially when it comes to, social media and what are things that you should probably think twice about, sharing, um, especially because prior to doing the clinic, I didn't even know about, like, I mean, obviously, they say don't sex, but I had no idea why before we studied the INRI SK case about the teenage girl who got arrested for child pornography because she sent sex to her friends.
And it's about the originator.
Yeah. So even though she ended up being kind of the victim because it was her friends who outed her, she still got arrested. So these are things that I think about now. And also because I never like when I because you had asked the question about, are these things that I learned growing up. The one thing that I didn't really learn growing up was about boundaries and also how to be a better active bystander. Um, so I think, really getting to internalize, what are my physical boundaries and my emotional boundaries, and also digital boundaries, and then really taking how to be an active bystander with me for the rest of my life, um, is just really great.
Yeah, I mean, I can see how that's valuable as an adult. I learn as well. I think, I didn't know that you could communicate through Xbox. And I think that the sexting example is, really interesting and important. And I know that some of the students struggled with, which was a good thing, the fact that it was all about who originated the message, not just
Yeah.
who shared it, not the secondary sharing, which I know can be more harmful than the primary. So I thought that I myself also, like you, have been learning from this. And I think, that's why I know within the curriculum, we're working to develop more of a training for teachers as well as parents and, caregivers in general. But, the real hope is that everyone learns this stuff, right? Because it's just kind of, the world is evolving, and that's why the program has to continue to evolve with technology and other things that'll come out of the woodworks.
Right.
But a lot of this is, humanistically based as well, that you can see there needs to be a shift, right? How people interact, how people treat each other, like you said, boundaries. And we know,
Yeah.
you know, homophobic name calling, being a
Right.
predictor of later harm.
Mm-hmm.
And all that relates to things like bullying and, bullying of differences in general.
Right. And even just like how to communicate, like they were, I knew that obviously we also communicate non-verbally, but how much of our communication is non-verbal was really fascinating.
Right. 70% is it? It's wild.
73% of our communication is actually nonverbal. And there are people who don't pick up on those clues, so it's harder for them to navigate through life. And there are people who are constantly picking up on those cues.
Right, like as a person in this world, and that's why these skills, it's so important. They're getting to learn them in middle school, elementary school. Imagine, if we all just grew up with this and it was just, what we knew in the world and how we would talk to people and treat people and, listen to them, like you said, and communicate. So I think that's a great point, and picking up on, my son is actually very in tune with nonverbal cues, and he'll be like, why you go, because he's trying to figure out. And I'm like, that's a good thing. I'm glad that he's picked up on that, and we talk about it. And a lot of people make nonverbal cues they don't even know about. But the fact that we're going to have a whole new generation that is paying attention to them, and aware of them, because sometimes we say words that we don't always mean, and we say words that we do mean. And so there's a lot to take in. So that's a great point. So thank you.
My clinic experience is something that is going to stay with me for the rest of my life. These are things that I'll be able to, these are ideas and concepts that I'll be able to pass on to my kids. And my students, when I start teaching,